Atomic Habits by James Clear. We're going to unpack the powerful secrets behind making changes that actually stick. So, you know that feeling, right? You're super motivated, you set a new resolution, and then a few weeks later, poof, it's gone. We've all been there. But what if I told you the problem isn't a lack of willpower? What if it's the approach you're taking?
And believe it or not, the answer starts with something pretty shocking: a baseball bat to the face. Yeah, literally. That's what happened to the author James Clear back in high school. It was an injury so bad it landed him in a medically induced coma. And on that incredibly long, tough road to recovery, he learned a lesson that would change his life. The only way to get anywhere was to start small. Really, really small.
And that one simple idea, that's our jumping off point. It leads us right to the first huge revelation in this book, the mind-blowing, almost magical power of making tiny 1% improvements.
Okay, so take the British cycling team. Before 2003, they were pretty mediocre. To be honest, they were a bit of a joke. We're talking one single gold medal in almost 100 years. Then, this new performance director, Dave Brailsford, comes along. And he brings this new philosophy with him, something he called the aggregation of marginal gains. And this is where it gets crazy. When I say they improved everything, I mean everything. They broke down the entire process of riding a bike and made every single part just 1% better. I mean, sure, you've got the obvious stuff, like redesigning bike seats. But then they did things like rubbing alcohol on the tires for better grip. They tested different massage gels. They even hired a surgeon to teach the riders how to wash their hands properly just to cut down on colds. I mean, who does that? It's genius. Just 1%. It sounds like almost nothing, doesn't it? A 1% change is so small, you probably wouldn't even notice it on any given day. It's so easy to just brush it off as insignificant. But what happens when you stack that tiny, insignificant improvement on top of another one day after day? What happens when you commit to getting just 1% better every single day for a whole year? Well, this is what happens. This graph shows it perfectly. The effects start to compound. That tiny, almost invisible win on day one, it builds, and it builds, and it builds, until it becomes something enormous. That top curve you're looking at, that's not just progress, that's an explosion of progress. That's where the magic really is. The math is just staggering. You end up almost 38 times better than when you started. Let that sink in. 38 times. That isn't just getting a little better. That is a complete and total transformation. It's exactly like compound interest, but for your life. Okay, so if the math is that good, why is it so hard? Why do we give up? If it's this powerful, why doesn't everyone do it? Well, that brings us to the second huge idea from the book, and it explains exactly why most of us quit way too soon. Here's the problem. We think progress should look like a straight upward line. You know, I put in the work, I should see the results. Simple. But real life, it just doesn't work that way. The most powerful outcomes are almost always delayed. And this gap, this frustrating space between what we think should be happening and what's actually happening, that's what James Clear calls the plateau of latent potential. I call it the valley of disappointment, and it's where most good intentions go to die. He uses a great analogy for this. Just picture an ice cube sitting on a table in a freezing cold room. Let's say it's 29 degrees. Now, you start to slowly warm up the room. Okay, the temperature ticks up to 30 degrees, then 31. And you're looking at the ice cube and nothing, absolutely nothing is happening. It feels like all that energy, all that effort to heat the room is for nothing. But here's the secret. That work isn't being wasted. It's being stored. And then the thermostat hits 32 degrees, and suddenly, a breakthrough. The ice starts to melt. That one single degree shift seems like it did all the work. But we know that's not true, right? It was all the energy that was pumped into the room before it hit 32 that made the change possible. And that's exactly what our habits are like. Those big breakthrough moments are always the result of a ton of previous actions that didn't seem to be doing anything at the time. There's this fantastic quote by Jacob Riis about a stone cutter. And apparently, the San Antonio Spurs, one of the winningest teams in sports history, have this hanging in their locker room. It's this powerful reminder that mastery isn't about one heroic effort. It's about patience. You just have to keep hammering away at the rock. So the big question is, how do you find the patience to keep hammering? How do you stick with it long enough to get through that valley of disappointment and see the breakthrough? Well, this leads us to another game-changing mindset shift. You have to forget about goals and focus on systems instead.
Goals versus systems. What's the difference? It's pretty simple, actually. A goal is the result you want. A system is the process that gets you there. So for a coach, the goal is win the championship. But the system, that's the real work. It's the daily practice drills, the recruitment strategy, the way they manage the team day in and day out.
Look, goals are good for one thing, setting a direction. They point you where you want to go. But it's the systems that actually move you forward. Think back to those British cyclists. For 100 years, they had the goal of winning. Big deal. They only started actually winning when they built a system of continuous tiny improvements.
And if you think about it, a goals-only mindset has some pretty major problems. First off, winners and losers often have the exact same goals. Every athlete at the Olympics wants to win gold, right? So the goal can't be what separates them. Second, hitting a goal is just a temporary fix. You can muster up the energy to clean your messy room, that's the goal, but if you don't change the sloppy habits that made it messy, you'll be cleaning it again next week. And finally, goals can mess with your happiness and create this weird yo-yo effect. You work so hard, you cross the finish line, and then what? The motivation just evaporates?
And that all leads to one of my favorite lines from the book. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Man, that is so powerful. The point is, stop worrying about the scoreboard. Focus on building a great system, and the score will take care of itself.
Okay, so we've talked about 1% gains, the plateau of latent potential, and building systems. But this next part, this is the core. This is the deepest, most powerful idea in the whole book. And it's that true, lasting change isn't about what you do, it's about who you believe you are. Clear breaks it down into 3 layers, like an onion. On the outside, you have outcomes. That's what you get. In the middle, you have processes. That's what you do. But right at the very core, the deepest layer is your identity. That's what you believe. And here's the thing. Most of us try to change from the outside in. We focus on the outcome we want. But the real secret, the most effective way to change, is to start from the inside out. It all starts with your identity.
Here's a perfect example. Imagine 2 people who are offered a cigarette. The first person says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." What are they really saying? They're saying, "I am a smoker and I am trying to force myself to be something I'm not." Now, the second person says, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker." See the difference? It's huge. That person's identity has already changed. That tiny shift in language points to a massive shift in belief.
So the real goal isn't just to read one book, it's to become a reader. The goal isn't to run one marathon, it's to become a runner. Every single time you perform a habit, you are casting a vote for the person you want to become. These tiny habits are the evidence that builds your new identity. So I'll leave you with this question. Who do you want to become? And what's just one tiny vote you can cast for that identity today?